Ladies and gentlemen, this is Michael Mupende, a former officer from the RPA, Rwanda's Patriotic Army, now the RDF, and formerly an officer from the National Resistance Army, definitely. First of all, in today's conversation, I will tell one of my stories, which is so inspiring to the youth. And I thank you in advance for taking the time to listen to my story. Your life story is uniquely your own. Share it with your people, for what remains untold often remains unknown. What I am about to share is not merely a war story. It is a story of courage, sacrifice, resilience, faith, and survival. It is a story from a few days, in less than a month of my life during the war. A few days that could fill an entire book, and I hope that it will inspire the youth in Rwanda and from all around the world. From my story of exceptional sacrifice during the war, we can draw such lessons like love for one's country and service, hence patriotism, courage and the ability to face challenges, perseverance and determination, selflessness for the common good, integrity and loyalty, the importance of unity and teamwork, respect and learning from history, valuing and preserving peace. Those are the lessons we can learn from this story I'm going to tell today. However, I am deeply, deeply discouraged that the main objectives of that war we fought were never achieved. We did not sacrifice to shed our blood to install a dictator, a monarch, or an emperor, but we fought for the unity of Rwandans, the rule of law, democracy, equitable sharing of national resources, freedom of speech, and equality for all. Today, these values remain unrealized aspirations. We have a dictator in place. The country ruled by a single individual and his family dynasty and cronies. This authoritarian leader has undermined everything we fought and sacrificed for. As I am about to recount the horrors we endured to pursue that change, it is important to remember the immense cost of that struggle. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers on both sides lost their lives, while countless civilians were displaced, suffered greatly, or perished during the conflict. The ideals that inspired so many to sacrifice their lives have yet to become reality. To the young people out there, a story of exceptional sacrifice in the war is not merely a story about conflict. It is a lesson in courage, perseverance, patriotism, teamwork, and the preservation of peace. These values can help you overcome challenges of life you encounter in everyday life. Let's get into the real story. On the 1st of October, the year 1990, I was among many Tutsi soldiers and officers who left Uganda's military and began the struggle against the regime of President Habyarimana. Our mission was driven by a simple but powerful purpose: to help millions of Rwandan refugees return to the homeland from which they had been denied for decades. For years, Rwandan Tutsi families had been scattered from all across the region and beyond, namely in Uganda, Burundi, Tanzania, former Zaire, and many other countries around the world. Our parents and grandparents had been forced into exile during the violence and political upheavals of 1950s and 60s and beyond. We went to war not for conquest, but to restore dignity, citizenship, and belonging to millions who had lived as refugees for decades. The death of our charismatic commander, General Fred Gisarwejema, on the second day of that invasion was a devastating blow. Just in a few hours of the second day of the invasion, his loss plunged us into confusion and uncertainty. I was among those who was unfortunate enough to witness both the circumstances of his death and the painful aftermath that followed. However, a little later, we had to grow. A meeting was convened at around 8 p.m. and a quick decision was reached to continue with the war. Rather than breaking our spirit, his death strengthened our resolve. It filled us with renewed courage. determination, and an unwavering commitment to the mission. From that day forward, we fought like men with nothing left to lose. We confronted the enemy without fear or hesitation. A fact that the surviving members of the former army, the Force Armée Rwandaise, can testify to themselves. We understood that the road ahead would be difficult, but we were determined to press on, complete the mission, and achieve victory regardless of the sacrifices required. On the early hours of October the 3rd, 1990, we advanced toward our assembly point at Nyabweshongwezi Junction. We were few in numbers and lacked adequate resources. Our platoons consisted barely 20 soldiers, and our companies numbered from 60 to 70 men and officers. But despite these limitations, we pushed forward. At dawn, our group, now the RPA Army, from the junction at Nyabweshongwezi, we divided into two columns. One column advancing along the Nyagatare axis under Major Sam Kaka, while the other moved along the Gabiro axis under Major Stephen Ndogote. Kaka's group had 4 battalions altogether, consisting roughly 250 to 300 each. They were the 1st Battalion, 3rd Battalion, 6th Battalion, and the 9th Battalion. In Major Ndogote's group, we formed the 4th Battalion of approximately 5 to 550 officers and men, determined to achieve our objective. We moved mostly at night and hid during the day, conducting reconnaissance while avoiding detection. Our temporary tactical base was established a few kilometers from Campo Gabiro in preparation for the attack. At this point, 6 days into the invasion, our situation was desperate. We had no food, no medicine, no ammunition resupply, and no logistics support. We carried only the weapons and ammunition on our backs. We were cut off from supply routes and isolated deep in enemy territory, the Akagera National Park. Several attempts were made to hunt for food, but each failed, day after day. First day, the hunting party was led by one late Lieutenant David. The second day party was led by late Second Lieutenant John Madura, but soldiers returned empty-handed. Many of us had gone 8 to 9 days without eating. Hunger weakened everyone. Some soldiers survived by chewing leaves and roots. On October the 7th, in the evening, Having seen all that, those failures, Captain Vitamazire called for an emergency meeting. He explained that regardless of our condition, we would soon have to attack the enemy encampment, or else we would be attacked first. But before doing that, we needed food if we were to survive and fight the war. He asked us if anyone believed they could hunt and bring back meat for the troops to eat. I stood and volunteered to go. Even though everybody was weak, that night, after the meeting ended, I stepped aside and offered a heartfelt prayer to God. I prayed for success, strength, and guidance. Then I selected 12 of the relatively strong soldiers I could find from the 3 companies. At dawn, we set out for the hunt. After several kilometers of movement through the park, we spotted 3 warthogs cooling themselves in a pond. I selected 2 soldiers and carefully planned our approach. Crawling closer, we positioned ourselves for a clean shot. When the movement came, when the moment came, we fired at the animals. 2 of the warthog fell. One died instantly, the other required a second shot before it was brought down. The third escaped, but we were grateful for what we had. Therefore, before approaching the animals, I paused once again to thank God for answering my prayer. But the meat from these 2 animals seemed not to be enough for the 200 plus soldiers and men we had. So we continued hunting. Later, with one of my soldiers, we successfully brought down a large antelope. And by evening, we had enough meat to sustain many exhausted soldiers. We carried the meat through hills back to our temporary camp. The soldiers finally ate after days of hunger. Their strength began to return. But ironically, I was so exhausted that I fell asleep before fully enjoying the meat myself. When I was awakened, I learned that I had been assigned to participate in the attack on Ogabiro at dawn of the next day. To this day, I believe that the hunt saved lives. Without it, many of us might not have had the strength to launch the attack on Ogabiro the following morning. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all again for listening to my story. Let us meet in the next episode of this story tomorrow. Take care and may God bless you. And bye.